in Nigeria, the demand for accountability and transparency has become a powerful rallying cry among citizens and activists alike. Now, for decades, the nation has grappled with issues of corruption, mismanagement of resources, and a lack of transparency in government affairs. These challenges have stifled development and eroded public trust in leadership. However, a new wave of activism is emerging, driven by collective determination to hold those in power accountable. Now, on that note, we'll be having a conversation this morning on the topic demanding accountability, activism, and the quest for transparency in Nigeria's government. And joining us to have this conversation is Femi Adeyeye. He's a political activist and co-convener Fund Education Coalition. Thank you so much for joining us this morning, Femi Adeyeye.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Thank you. It's our pleasure. You know, we're talking about activism. We're talking about issues surrounding it, demanding accountability. When a lot of people have, have a different understanding of the word activism. So as an activist, can you bring us up to speed? What exactly is the meaning and the context of activism, particularly in being practiced in a climate like Nigeria?
All right, thank you very much for that question. It has quite many times has become very contentious, and especially because of so many intricacies that you have within the definition in Nigeria. But to make it very simple, because you do not have to go to Harvard to understand this very simple concept. To make it very simple is to say an activist is an active citizen. Yes. So a citizen who is conscious about the political happenings, the citizen who is ready to take action, because it has a root in the word action.
Okay.
So an activist is an active citizen, to put it very simply. It is not a profession. It is not, as against what you can now see in Nigeria today, where people have now so much commercialized activism in this country because they do not understand it. So what we say is that citizens must move away from being docile, and then they become active. And at that point, they become activists. So that's what it is, basically, and nothing so academic.
Right. Let me just take you up on this question now. You've given a background to what activism is. Now, in Nigeria, how have the political and economic systems influenced the development of civil society and activism at large?
Yes, the truth of the matter is that the material conditions in Nigeria today is actually pushing everybody to become activists. That's the truth.
Actually.
Because when you cannot eat morning, afternoon, nights, the price of fuel is, skyrocketing. The standard of living basically is off the roof. And so it's making quite a number of our persons to become very active citizens. To be cautious of their own sufferings, and they begin to speak against some of these things, to even begin to mobilize themselves for action. Look at the last End Bad Governance protest. It's very organic. You do not even have to tell anybody, discuss the issues with anybody before they troop to the streets, to fight for their survival. So the economic condition, the political condition in Nigeria is giving birth to a lot of active citizens, and we would see many of them in the coming days. Talking about the civil society organizations, yes, because it is proliferating, because you have a number of issues to talk about, from climate change to gender activism to environmental activism, political activism, even activism among the people we call people with disabilities. So there are quite a number of issues to actually address, because our society has for a long time dropped this ball. I mean, our politicians, they've dropped the ball of governance, and what they're so interested in is propaganda as of today. So because they've dropped it, that is why you would have a lot of civil society organizations addressing issues that governments themselves should address. So that is why you have what you have today in our space.
I like that you painted a vivid picture earlier on of how not being able to eat morning, afternoon, and evening makes an activist out of people, right? In the last protest, the hashtag End Bad Governance protest, you had opposing groups. You had a group that came out to say, do not protest. And you had another group that was protesting hunger. Now, this is my question to you. As an activist yourself, what are the primary strategies and tactics you would employ to demand accountability and transparency?
Yeah, the truth of the matter is that we have actually moved beyond demanding accountability, because you can only demand accountability from people who are willing to be accountable. That's the truth. In Nigeria today, quite a number of things are done with so much opacity that you cannot even understand. From budgetary allocation, so today we are still fighting over how much do our senators, how much exactly do they receive? You get, someone will come here today, will tell you 14 million. Another person will come, another senator himself, he will tell you it's not 14 million, no, me I collected 21, no. Another one will say, no, it's between 15 to 20. So, and you're telling me as an active citizen to demand accountability from people who are not even accountable to themselves, within themselves, they are not accountable. So it is a serious issue. So for us, we are mobilizing people to change the system from the roots. So there is activism and there is a revolutionary duty. So activism can actually still, when a house, for example, has a faulty foundation. Let me use this analogy. Activism would maybe add, we want to paint the house, we want POP. But a revolutionary duty is to go to the foundation of that issue and do what we builders. Yes,
I like it.
Because you cannot be painting a house that has a faulty foundation. It does not make sense. Right. So the foundation of Nigeria as of today is faulty. It is faulty. We had, for example, I will be in Abuja on Monday. I will be discussing the Electoral Act. So when I got the information, I was just laughing. I said, which Electoral Act are we amending again? In an election where the INEC chair is appointed by the president, who is also contesting in that election. So there are quite, it's just like you are going into a match and you are the one appointing the referee. So these are fundamental.
It's nice.
What are you now saying? No, what are you saying? That the INEC is not actually independent. That's what you're saying.
Exactly. And I'm not the only one saying it. In fact, senior advocates of Nigeria, different, we've seen one, a partisan, official of the APC, almost becoming a resident electoral commissioner. I'm talking about Loretta Onochi, if not for the noise that we all made across board. She was almost becoming a resident electoral commissioner. And from there, she's going to, continue and then would become an INEC chair. So there are fundamental issues, there are foundational issues we need to tackle. Not just, to mobilize people for action is very easy. You can do that in 24 hours. Oh, there is a problem with this, in our country, let us move out. But we need to organize our people beyond just mobilizing them. We need to organize them, make them see the issues, over time. And so every one of us can mobilize towards a lasting solution and not this whole way of circumambulating around the issues that we've been doing all these years.
Right. I'd like to take a follow-up question in regards to this conversation around accountability and transparency. And I'd like to connect it with the End Bad Governance protest. Now, I know that you're one of people that, you lend your voice out a lot in terms of activism. Now, we have heard the report of protesters that have been held without any trial, if I could use that word. This morning, even the Guardian newspaper has it that Senior Advocate of Nigeria, Femi Falana, has rallied the NBA against the illegal arrest and detention of protesters, even journalists. I know Adeyeye has lent his voice talking about how these protesters are being detained without even a proper trial or opening of the case to what exactly their crime is. NSAS protesters, some of them have been held in custody. A report has it that about 2,000 plus protesters are being held all over, for crimes that we don't even really have details on. Now, as an activist, we've heard voices come out to call for their release and what have you. What other strategies can you employ, and what are the other ways you can, reach out to the government to ensure that cases like this, illegal detention, is addressed and people are free to go out to protest because they know they will come back home?
All right, I like how you landed, and that's a very good one. But the thing is this, it is quite unfortunate where we find ourselves in this country. Even in the darkest days of the military, I never, because I was not born then, but I could, I mean, I was not conscious then. I was born actually. It was never this bad. Even when activists were picked up and sent to court and all of that, pardon, immediately the courts looks at the facts of the matter. Many times they are released. But today, under what I call civilian dictatorship, the courts itself, because if you want to talk about other means, you will be talking about the courts. That, why not, aside just protesting about, calling for their release, approach the court and all of that. Let me say it here. Without these people facing trial, appearing before any judge, the judge, Justice Nwete of Federal High Court Abuja, granted an order to the police to detain them for 60 days. In fact, that they should be remanded in prison for 60 days. It is only in Nigeria you pick up somebody, lock the person up for, arbitrarily, for as long as possible, and then you start doing your investigation. Nigerian police would never do investigation before the arrests.
If I may ask, what are the charges that are laid? What are the charges against these people that have been asked to detain them for 60 days? Have they stated?
Phony charges like terrorism financing. Out of these persons, 30 of them, their accounts have been, frozen by the courts. There was also a court order to freeze their account. And these are people who do not even have 5,000 naira in their accounts. If you check the charge sheet, you will find 14-year-old, 16-year-old. How will people like that finance terrorism? So financing terrorism, treasonable felony, in a bid to overthrow the government. In fact, the police were so foolish to the point that in the charge sheets, they said they wanted to, they were financed to overthrow the government by raising of a placard of banners. Wow. Where do you overthrow a government? Yes, it's in the charge sheet. I can share with you. Where do you overthrow a government? By carrying banners and placards. It goes to tell you that these people are not serious, and they are just going about to create fear, in the populace. But all these tactics is going to fail because Nigerians who stood against Abacha until he was kicked out of power, or he was disgraced out of power, will not budge. We've seen the darkest of days. And so this one that is happening right now, it shows that they are weak. Whenever tyranny is at this level, and I'm saying this to some of activists and social justice advocates, whenever tyranny is at this level, where over 2,000 protesters presently in Nigeria are detained across these detention centers, over 2,000 people, where journalists cannot perform their duty anymore without fear, where people would have, look at what happened to Pidom. It was picked up, the police that cannot track kidnappers, that cannot track terrorists who post on Twitter, that cannot track terrorists who hold rallies. Maybe you don't know. Terrorists now hold rallies in this country. Terrorists hold crusades in this country. They can't track those ones. But a journalist who is exposing, who is only being a critic of the government, you could track them down. In fact, what we heard was that Pidom was blindfolded, taken to solitary confinement, tied to the back, handcuffed to the back. That is what we've seen. Recently, Adeyeye Soyinka, coming from the UK, was also picked up at the airport. So all these things that are happening are pointing to the fact that tyranny is here with us. But what we must do at this time is to buckle up, roll up our sleeves and fight this tooth and nail. We are going to fight it on the streets through protest. We are going to fight even in their courts, even though we know they are the ones who own those courts. But we'll challenge them to ask that if there is a rule of law in this country, why do you pick up people and then you grant an order even minors, 14-year-old, 16-year-old,
You know,
in
let,
prison
let,
for protesting, just for becoming active citizens, like I've said earlier, as if being an active citizen is a crime in
Let me come
Nigeria.
in here. You know, earlier on you said you've gone beyond demanding for transparency and accountability. Now, in this age of information technology, how do you as an activist utilize social media and technology to mobilize support and amplify the voices of the people?
Yes, there are empirical evidence to that. We all use. In fact, what we're doing right now is social media. I know this is live on Twitter. I know this is live on YouTube. So it's part of it. NSAS protests, started actually on Twitter when the video, and if the government would if they had two options today, to either allow to either be in power or take out Twitter or take out social media, they would go for social media, because it has actually exposed them. It has made more people active citizens, so that when something is happening in your area, you can pick up your phone, you can record it, you can post it online, you can talk about it, you have your opinion about issues. Before, it used to be, in the media space, it used to be the editors who had the exclusive preserve of determining what to put out, any news that. But today in Nigeria, everyone is now a newsmaker. Everyone is now a producer of news. If you can use your phone very well, definitely so it has helped a lot. Yeah, definitely. It has helped to expand the space, for activism, for media and things like that. So as activists, we continue to teach people that social media is actually a tool, but it will not replace the number of legs that we need on ground to fight injustice. It is just a tool. It will not, for me, I don't believe that there's something called social media activism. I was in a workshop where I said, I don't believe in social media activism. I believe it is just a tool to mobilize people out on the street for the different actions. Definitely, you can write petitions, you can submit letters, you can be on TV to talk about issues, you can, there are so many physical actions that social media would not replace. So social media is a tool, and we must, understand that, so that we don't replace it and then we are not having results.
Right.
So that's it, basically.
Very, very true. But before we go, because our time is fast spent, as an activist, what's that one word you put out to Nigerians that feel like, okay, you know what, we're done, we're tired, we have lent our voices, it has not been heard, we've gone out for protests, some of us have not come back, our lives are not safe. What is that one word you put out to Nigerians that can, stir them up to hold on to that belief, not to lose their hope, in 30 seconds?
Yeah, so this is what I would say, that the price you pay for liberty is eternal vigilance. You don't have to go and sleep, yes, at this time. When the likes of Martin Luther King fought racial segregation, Malcolm X fought racial segregation in the United States of America, is that to say racism has ended? No, but they played their own role at that time to open up the space, make it an issue, add quite a number of victories, quite a number of, concessions. So it is a continuous phase. We should not allow, there should never be a day when people are now so afraid to criticize their own government. That day should not happen. That day should not happen. So we must continue. And I think that was what happened during the End Bad Governance protest. Despite all the, threats, vitriolic, ethnic diatribes around it. Oh, don't come out. To the point that it even brought out political Oro. That Oro would come out, and if you do, you can't protest in Lagos. People showed, the tyrannical regime that we are not a conquered people, we are not a defeated people who would come out and would protest, and that was what happened. So this is not the time to back down. This is the time to add more fire, to the furnace. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Femi Adeyeye, political activist. Thank you for joining us this morning and for sharing your thoughts. We'll do well to have you some other time, to talk about some other trending stories.
Thank you.
Enjoy the rest of your day. Right.